What rights and laws concern members of the U.S. military?
GI rights lawyer James M. Branum joins us today to discuss, and we're going to have a lot more news today here on The Undercurrent. Hello, hello.
Hello. You know, we have a water themed show kind of thing, and I am deathly afraid of deep water. Just so you know, because
Do you know how to swim?
I do.
Yeah.
But I like in a pool is fine. But even like you get like an Olympic sized pool, I'm just a little, but I'm okay. But then you get like, if it's open water in the ocean, I'm like, no.
Nope, nope, nope.
No. Yeah, like I don't want to go on a cruise. It's not just the hantavirus or pooping in bags. It's it's like, what's in the water? What's down there, y'all? So I'm a little bit shy of that, but I do like the water. I like stories about the ocean and stuff, all the weird stuff that they find in the oceans too.
Like in the really deep, like the really deep water creatures. Those are so weird.
Yeah. That it's like, how do you like if you go down to a certain depth, like you go down to the bottom of the ocean, there's like all this pressure. Yeah. And it's like if you or I went out in that water, instant diet. We would be squashed. But those fish, they're just like
but they have those like those squishy looking things and things that look really prehistoric.
Yeah, they got the angler fish too that has the little light, and then they got the crazy psycho face. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wow.
Yeah, that's another reason to stay up top, above the water there. So before we get started though, I just want to remind people that I am on the internet as well, and the internet could go down because of this. Dun dun dun. There it is.
Yeah,
this is the weather. Yeah, this is the weather pattern that has been very familiar for the last week and a half, at least, or at least a couple of weeks. So this is what's going on in Chicago here, and there's some stuff going on for all our Gulf Coast fans. Be careful down there too. This is Tropical Storm Arthur. Down here in Texas, and it's supposed to go inland, but it's basically just gonna go right across the southeast there. And your neck of the woods too. I think you're going to get at least a piece of this somehow. So you stay safe down there too. That's zoom.earth, by the way, if you want to look at that for yourself.
So in other words, if Uncle Warren disappears suddenly, I may have to take the helm, as they say.
The condition, it's not bad. It's 58 degrees here, pretty nice temperature wise, but just a little rain and drizzle. But as the show progresses, things might get a little hairy.
They might.
So we got CBC voter and Miguel in the house. What's going on, y'all? Good to see you. Hope you're having a good Wednesday. We do have a guest coming up around about 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, James M. Branum. He's a GI rights lawyer down in Oklahoma. So it's going to be a pretty interesting show.
Yeah, looking forward to that. But first, as always, we got to get to the Riptide and stuff that's going on right now. So there is a deal in place, sort of. I guess there is. I guess you could say that in the Iran war, as Iran and U.S. What is this thing called? It's called MOU. You'll tell us down here. I had it in my head. Now it's gone. So U.S. Iran MOU includes $300 billion private fund for Tehran, according to the report. So this is kind of new news. It before the details of the ceasefire. They hadn't really let them out until now, and we'll go over that in just a second. So the new U.S.-Iran framework to end Washington's illegal war includes a $300 billion private fund aimed at securing investments in the country, namely for rehabilitation and reconstruction, according to an exclusive report by Reuters released on June 16th, which was yesterday. The report coincides with Iranian demands for reparations following the destructive war waged by the U.S. and Israel. A $300 billion private fund designed to trigger investment into Iran is outlined in the U.S.-Iran Framework Agreement, and more than half that sum has already been committed. An informed source told the British outlet it will be comprised entirely of private sector funds, which is interesting because I think they were also holding $28 billion in Iranian funds, had frozen them as well. I don't know what's going on with that, but the fund is designed to give both sides an economic incentive to include a final deal to end the war, the source added. The source also stressed that the fund is a private investment vehicle and not a reconstruction or reparations program. Wink, wink, wink. It will not include any money or grants. The source went on to say companies from I guess that would be any federal money, they meant to say. Companies from the U.S., Gulf states, Asia, South America, and Africa have committed to contributing. So I think that's a memorandum of understanding. That's what MOU stands for.
Yeah.
It will not include any money or grants. The source went on to say, okay, yeah, we already said that. So let's go into a little more detail about, oh, hello. Why you gotta be so dramatic? Hello. Let's get a point. So this is from Al Arabiya. They have obtained a copy of the U.S. Memorandum of Understanding. The document includes key points. I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm just going to hit the key points. If you want to read all of these in detail, you can go to our Substack and read all of these articles in full. So Iran and the U.S., together with their allies in the current war, declare upon the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, or the MOU, an immediate and permanent end to war on all fronts, including Lebanon, and undertake that from now on they will not launch any hostile action against each other. Iran and the U.S. undertake to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and to refrain from interfering in each other's internal affairs. We'll see about that.
Mm-hmm.
Iran and the U.S. undertake to negotiate and reach a final agreement with a maximum period of 60 days, extendable by mutual consent. So this is going to happen in stages, right? So the first stage is going to be 60 days. And then after that, they're going to talk about more things like, I believe they're going to talk about Gaza, and they're also going to talk about their nuclear program. Immediately upon the signing of the MOU, the U.S. will lift the naval blockade and prevent any interference or obstruction against Iran, and restore traffic within a maximum of 30 days to its full capacity. The U.S. also undertakes to withdraw its forces from surrounding areas within 30 days after the final agreement. And that means the Gulf states that the United States has bases in. That's a very significant right there. Iran will immediately take steps to ensure that the movement of merchant ships from the Arabian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa is resumed, basically opening up the Strait of Hormuz, or as what is it, one of the secretaries that Trump has called it the Strait of Vermouth. Like, he wishes that was a Strait of Vermouth. He'd be out there just drinking it up. The U.S. undertakes, together with its regional partners, to create a comprehensive plan agreed upon by both parties for the rehabilitation and economic development. That's the $300 billion. Implementation mechanism of this plan will be formulated within 60 days. The U.S. commits to ending on a schedule to be agreed upon as part of the final agreement all types of sanctions currently facing Iran, including resolutions of the UN Security Council and the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and all unilateral U.S. sanctions. That's a big one, too, both primary and secondary. Iran reiterates it will never produce nuclear weapons, which is what they've been doing this. They've been saying this the whole time. We don't have nukes. We don't plan on getting nukes, which is kind of funny that we'll make sure that's in there. Iran and the U.S. have agreed that the fate of enriched material and the fate of all other mutually agreed nuclear-related issues will be addressed, like we said in the final agreement. And it goes on here, but those are the major highlights there. And when Trump's involved with this, and this isn't Trump derangement syndrome, this is just recognizing a pattern of activity, right? This can easily go, as the kids say, teats up really depending on what Israel does. If Israel is still attacking Lebanon, Iran's going to be hesitant to not actually do something about it, as they've been doing the last few weeks. They've been taking care of it too. So it's good that this is moving in this direction, but again, with some of the players involved, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I think time will tell, as they say.
Yeah,
time is going to tell on this. I have no particular faith in any of this, or in this agreement, and we'll see what happens. I do think that Trump and whoever was hissing in his ear really miscalculated when they did this.
Well, they thought it was going to be like everything, like Iraq and Afghanistan, that it was just going to be go in, boom, you cut the head off the snake, and then all of a sudden you put in your own people and everything's fine.
That did not happen.
And that did not happen at all, because they misunderstood their enemy. And and we're probably listening to these whispers in his ear, particularly from a small country not too far from there, saying that, like we could do it. We could take him out.
No, and as we've noted, Iran has been preparing for this for a long time, and they're part of a very ancient culture. And ancient cultures, those people and those cultures and those nations tend to be very patient.
Yeah. Well, for 47 years anyway, Iran was pretty patient and had planned for this very thing because they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
So, and Trump and company was like, oh crap, we better kind of back out of this, try to save face, but that's not going to happen either. So the Iranian army, the IRGC, responded to all this as well. So Iran's army says any violation of the MOU will be met with swift response. The spokesperson of the Iranian army has stated that the armed forces of the Islamic Republic will maintain the highest level of readiness and systematically strengthen defensive and deterrent capabilities as the Memorandum of Understanding with the U.S. is implemented, issuing a stern warning that any violation will trigger an immediate and powerful reversal to pre-agreement conditions. So he goes on. This is General Mohammed Akraminiya in an interview with IRIB News Monday night said, "We have complete distrust in the enemy, as you should." Hey, Jamar, good morning to you. Lance, you too. We have complete distrust in the enemy. So no sugarcoating it. They're like, yeah, we don't believe any of this, but we'll go along with it for now. We're facing an enemy that has twice bombed the negotiation table and stabbed diplomacy in the back from behind. Therefore, we have no trust in this enemy. And just as during the ceasefire period, we will seriously pursue the path of strengthening our defensive and deterrent power, he added. The spokesperson emphasized that while the Islamic Republic supports any understanding or agreement that serves the interests of the Iranian nation, enforcing the enemy's commitments requires power and vigilance. If the enemy violates the provisions of the agreement or memorandum of understanding, we will quickly and forcefully return the military situation in the region to the conditions before the agreement and once again make the enemy regret its actions. And that's basically what they said, like, we don't trust Trump at all. I mean, talk to the Russians about that when not just Trump, but the United States in 2014 when they basically tried to get Ukraine into NATO against a deal that they had made with Russia too. So U.S. doesn't really have a good reputation around the world for keeping its word about things, and Iran obviously knows this as well.
Talk to Trump's own base, who he was promising, no endless wars. We're going to stay out of other countries' business. And then we decided we wanted Greenland, and we were going to take Greenland. And then we kidnapped the president of Venezuela and his wife. And then we decided to start messing around in Iran.
Yeah.
And a lot of those folks are not happy about this. That's why I think when I'm talking about miscalculation, the miscalculation is severe.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the Trump base are America first too. So no wars and no giving money to other countries when they could use that money here in the United States.
Just a thought.
Yeah. So they are supposed to make the official signing of this MOU on Friday. I'll have more on that on Morning Extra, and we'll see what happens then, see if anything has changed between now and then. I got a feeling something might, but who knows? Maybe Trump is so scared poopless that he actually might stick to this. And let's just say Israel is none too happy with this agreement too. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, back here at home in the U.S., tragedy in Southern California, as 8 people have died in a B-52 bomber crash at a U.S. Air Force base in Southern California. I think this is Edwards. So yeah, there's in the Mojave Desert there. That's the B-52 smoldering there. So let's see what happened. A B-52 bomber crashed shortly after takeoff at a U.S. Air Force base in Southern California's Mojave Desert and burst into flames Monday, killing all 8 people aboard. Military officials said aerial footage showed virtually nothing left of the aircraft that went down around 11:20 a.m. local time during a routine test mission at Edwards Air Force Base, which is north of L.A. Black smoke rose from a large swath of charred desert near the runway on the base, with emergency vehicles nearby. Those on the B-52 included government contractors and uniformed military. Aircraft manufacturer Boeing confirmed Monday evening that 2 of its employees were on board. After reviewing footage of the crash, it was determined that no one could have survived. Colonel James Hayes, the deputy commander for the 412th Test Wing at Edwards, said in a news conference, "We lost 8 great Americans," Hayes said, adding that officials were working to notify their families. It was not immediately clear what caused the crash, and it could take up to 6 months to complete an investigation, Hayes said, but shared that the B-52 was supporting the radar modernization program. And this isn't the first military crash under Trump's regime, and the part in Trump part due. There was that, what was it, at Reagan International Airport? There was a military helicopter ran into a civilian plane, I believe, and they've been having problems with these planes. I don't know if it's a technical issue. Maybe they're making these planes on the cheap, or maybe it's a lack of instruction to some of these pilots. I don't know what's going on with this stuff.
I mean, are the contractors getting paid on time to make these things? Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe they're not. Maybe they're sending a message.
Well, it's not unheard of for major corporations to cut corners when it comes to building stuff. What's up, Chuck? Good to see you. And that's just kind of like a microcosm of everything. You see the shrinkflation. You see these companies cutting corners with products, telling you it's a certain size when in fact it's smaller, and they're charging you more. And it just seems like this overall thing of just like Idiocracy, the movie, is not going to wait 500 years for it to happen. It seems like we're right on the doorstep, if not, our foot is in the door of that kind of future right now. What do you think?
Well, I think, they're calling it there's actually, I think, a book about it called the enshittification.
I've heard of that.
The idea that things have just steadily gotten worse. Yeah. And that we've come to accept it, and we're so accepting of it. We might complain a little bit, but otherwise we just take it and moan.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what it is. They're they're seeing how far the American people will take stuff.
Here's an interesting. B-52s are crazy old, built from 1952 to 1962. Lots of updates, of course, on the hardware, but it is still a very, very old plane.
Yeah, so that's a Military Law Task Force. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, they are crazy old. They've been around. Now, I'm wondering if this is No, the stealth ones are the B2s, right? That's not the B50. The B52s are the old ones. The one the band's named after. Yeah. So yeah, well, that's the thing. If they're getting all this money for the military, why are they keeping these old planes up there? It doesn't make any sense, right? If that's the logic of spending, or almost spending $1.5 trillion on this, which they're gonna have here, they're probably going to approve that. Just keep your eye on the skies, folks, because you never know what may be falling out of it. Did you know there was a plot at the White House for the UFC event over the weekend?
The funny thing is that I was going into the show notes to add it and saw that you had already added it. It was just like, what am I looking at here?
Now, in the past, whenever there's been some sort of plots that have been unearthed against, the government or government officials or whatnot, people took those things a lot more seriously back then than they do now. Because nowadays it seems like it's the boy who cried wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I really don't take this very seriously either. But who knows? It probably could have been a real deal. So, teen among arrested in plot to attack the White House UFC event. There's Curly from the Three Stooges there. Good to see him. What began with a concerned mother calling police on her son ended in the thwarting of a terror plot involving drones and snipers aimed at members of U.S. Congress. Attending Sunday's UFC event at the White House, the government alleges in a criminal complaint filed against one of the plot's admitted leaders, an Ohio teen. Tyson Proper, 19, of Danville, Ohio, told federal investigators on June 11th he intended to, quote, jumpstart a revolution in the U.S. with an attack on June 14th that would begin with drone bombings over the north side of the arena. Co-conspirators, the charging documents allege, plan to take up sniper positions overlooking southern evacuation routes and shoot high-value targets, including U.S. politicians the group identified as supporting Israeli interests. Proper was hospitalized with homicidal ideations. Interesting. On the evening of June 10th, after his mother called police in Danville expressing concerns over his recent purchases of firearms, ammunition, and ballistic plates, his affiliation with a Christian extremist group on TikTok, preoccupation with Jeffrey Epstein and government corruption, online posts sympathetic to Adolf Hitler, and his stated intention to conduct hit-and-run missions. All your conspiracy theory greatest hits right there. Proper is charged with, among other offenses, attempted murder of an officer or employee of the U.S. Federal criminal complaints indicate authorities arrested at least 4 others in connection with the plot, and as a result of the investigation into Proper, Abraham Hermosillo Alvarez in Nebraska, Brian Omar Roa and Michael Allen Thomas in California, and Daniel Eskridge in Missouri. In an interview with law enforcement, Proper described a conspirator using the moniker Shepherd as the group's chief organizer. A criminal complaint alleged that user was Alvarez and that he used coded terms in encrypted chats to describe priority targets, including Trump, Vice President Vance, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whose attendance at the event had been the subject of online rumors, and Elon Musk. Bibi did not attend the event. Investigators said the group also planned to target Congress people, including U.S. Senators Tom Cotton, Marsha Blackburn, Jim Justice, Shelley Moore Capito, and U.S. Representatives Carol Miller and Riley Moore, all of them Republicans. The FBI learned about the alleged threat 4 days before the mixed martial arts extravaganza on the White House's South Lawn. Quote, and thanks to the rapid action of the FBI, our partners in the Department of Justice, in a multi-state operation, multiple individuals are now in custody, and allegedly planned attacks were stopped cold. FBI Director Kash Patel said on his merch website, said in a post on the tweeters on Tuesday morning, he has that merch site.
I know that hacked. Everybody keeps in malware. Yes.
That's so beautiful thing. The Secret Service worked around the clock to identify those responsible and hold them accountable. Director Sean Curran said in a separate statement, Trump, who celebrated his 80th birthday at the UFC event Sunday, sought to tie the fights to larger celebration. Yeah, 250, whatever there. So, again, I lift my nose to the air, and wafting it through the air when it comes to stories like this is a hint of the bull caca that tends to go along with stories like this. It just seems too convenient. Like, all the players are there. It's like they went after Republicans. They're going to jumpstart a revolution, talking about support, going against politicians who support Israeli interests. I'm not saying those people aren't out there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, in this particular context, I would really take this with a grain of salt as far as it being legitimate, right?
Yeah.
Because they've lied to us on many occasions, and this wouldn't be one of those situations where they didn't lie to us either about that.
I appreciate the kid's mother turned him in.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was not doing a very good job of concealing what he was doing, and mom decided it was, best to handle it. This is one of those 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Part of me says, that you have stochastic terrorism. You've got people who are mentally unbalanced and are easily swayed, whether this was just general rhetoric that got them to do something stupid and got a group of them to do something stupid, or whether he was primed with the online conspiracy rhetoric, and then somebody with some connection, some power, got the organization together. I don't know at this point, but this is becoming so everyday.
Yeah.
That you're just seeing these sad sacks. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious if any of this kind of stuff is going to happen after the midterms elections. So come November, once the deal is done and the new people are brought in and some are ushered out, are we going to see more of these so-called threats against Trump? I kind of think you probably won't, because there won't be any need for that unless they're trying to scare you into something else.
Well, that's always a possibility.
There's always something that they want to scare you about.
Whether right? It's, I mean, again, the midterms, we don't know. And then there remains the question of whether he is going to try to run again, or who's going to do that, and fun and games.
Well, that sounds like a legal thing, and that sounds like a wonderful segue to our guest today, who is a lawyer. Really? Ew,
hello, lawyers. James. Good to see you. Long time no see.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I wanted to bring my friend James Branum. We met a long time ago, another world far, far away. And he is an attorney down in Oklahoma with he practices in multiple areas of law, but he specializes in rights of military service members. And given the military activity and the continuation of endless war we talked about on this show, I thought it would be great to bring him on the show and talk to him about the rights of military service members, what some of them have gotten themselves into, and just his experiences. So thank you so much, James, for being here.
Oh, so good to be here. I really appreciate it. And I've enjoyed listening in so far. It's been a great show.
Oh, I appreciate that. So first of all, how did you select this area of law?
Well, it was when I was in law school. I was wanting to do some area of law that would be about lifting people up out of oppression in some way. So I considered several options, but then I had a close family friend, someone who's really more like family to me, during law school, had some problems with military law. He was in the National Guard. He had a traumatic childhood, and so when he was going every month to drill was very traumatizing, enough that he quit going to drill. Scared our family to death. We didn't know what to do. And the experience of that, and him also just struggling to get help, legal help, really highlighted for me the need for this. And so when I was in law school, I got to some training early on through the GI Rights Hotline. I got to be found some mentors, especially through the Military Law Task Force, the National Lawyers Guild. So by the time I became actually an attorney in 2006, I was able to jump in head first and start doing cases pretty quickly. And since then, that has been my primary practice area. I do some other things too, but military law has continued to be the thing I keep coming back to. On the defense side, one thing I'll mention is that members of the military have the right to be represented by either a public defender, a JAG attorney to be appointed to represent them, or they can hire a civilian attorney that can represent them.
Okay.
Or they can be represented by both, which is actually my personal preference. I encourage my clients to use their public defender lawyer, but for me to be alongside. I sit first chair. I get to overrule them if the public defender JAG is wrong. But in most cases, it's very helpful. We get their insider take on the system. On the other hand, I'll do things the defense JAG won't do. For instance, if it would help my client's case, I will go to the press. I will take a more aggressive stance. While the defense JAG, they're much more cautious. Many of them are great lawyers. I'm not knocking them as lawyers. I am sometimes knocking their lack of aggression sometimes when they need to be more aggressive.
I can understand that. You were mentioning that you had somebody who, that you knew who was having some issues around that. Do you often find that many of your clients are kind of in that situation where they are people who've come from backgrounds where there may be poverty, there may be instability. They go into the military. In some cases, for a combination of reasons, would be the GI Bill, would be that that they maybe don't feel a lot of direction, and this provides them with 3 hots and a cot, and they've got a place to be. And then they find that they've gotten themselves into something far bigger than they realized. Is that kind of a common scenario?
Absolutely. And bear in mind, many people, when they're enlisting, they're 17, 18, 19 years old. And by the way, you can enlist at age 17 with the parent signs off on it, which again, violates international law. Many countries, the world, forbid enlisting under age 18. The U.S. still allows it at age 17. But these are kids, let's be honest. We know that from brain science that particularly for young men, their brains are not fully formed into their 20s, but yet we allow them to enlist. And many of them, they sign up for the reasons you stated. Finances is number 1, number 2, and number 3. It's a huge factor. And I would also argue, if you look at military enlistment trends, it often tracks very closely with what the economy is doing. The other issue is often people wanting structure, wanting direction, and also people escaping traumatic, crappy home life. Those are the main reasons. Do people join for patriotic reasons? A small percentage do. That is not the majority of the reasons why people enlist today. That's just the reality. But for those who do, often they have the hardest time of all because they went in with high-minded principles. They thought they were fighting to protect the homeland. And then they discovered, no, I'm being sent for the imperial aggressions of a madman. We have a crazy fascist as president. And for many young people, when they have that realization, it is really, really destabilizing. They don't know who to trust, who to believe. That's also why, by the way, if you look at a lot of the cases of extremist political violence of late and some of the threats of that, very often it's military veterans involved in that. Why? The reason is they've been lied to. They don't know who to trust. And when someone comes along with a great conspiracy theory, often they get pulled in. And it's a really, really sad situation, but it happens a lot.
I think that when somebody feels that they've been deeply betrayed, we as human beings are going to try and seek our tribe or our own people at that point because we've been betrayed. And I think, do you think that that instinct is what can motivate some of these military veterans who thought that they had that tribe with the military? They feel betrayed by it so that they are just seeking that kind of tribe anywhere, somebody who will validate their sense of betrayal and give them purpose again? Absolutely.
That's why, again, hate groups, conspiracy theorists pull people in. But it's also, the good news is it's also an opportunity for organizing, political organizing. And so if you look at movements such as Veterans for Peace, About Face, Veterans Against the War, these are organizations that have been organizing veterans and even active duty people in the military. And what I've seen over and over again is when someone has been pushed around, when they wake up and they realize, I can push back and there's other people that will stand with me, that's a game changer. It can transform people's lives in very positive ways.
Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask about, like, once people get into the military and find out they were sold a bill of goods, I noticed here, do you deal with a lot of people who are conscientious objectors? And how often do people like that who say, hey, look, this is not what I signed up for, how does that process work? And if you've worked with people like that?
I have. Of course, when someone comes to me who is in the military, who has those issues of conscience, what I first do with them is I explore with them all of their options. Conscientious objection is one path to a discharge. It's actually a pretty difficult path to a discharge. It's not always the best option for many service members. So, for instance, if a service member is, say, suffering from serious PTSD, traumatic brain injury, things like that, they really need to go, for instance, what I am often the best option for them is to go through the medical disability process, for instance. There may be other circumstances. There might be a family hardship. There might be other circumstances that get them a discharge in a simpler and easier way. But for those who do determine that the best option is filing for CO status, at that point, then what they have to do is they work. Often it'll take several weeks or even a month or more to write a solid conscientious objector application. What they have to do is to answer these 6 essay questions. But those essay questions, if you do a good job of it, it's going to be long. Bear in mind, too, for many service members, they are high school graduates. Many of them have not gone to college. Writing is not their forte. And so they need a lot of support through that process. It also has to reflect who they are. It can't be some expert writing it for them. It has to be their words. It has to be truthful to them. So once they've worked through that process of putting that together, and sometimes people I work with, they do it directly with me. Other times they work with organizations such as the Center for Conscience on War, incredible organization. By the way, I mentioned their website is centeronconscience.org. Really good folks. But they'll work with a group like that, put together their application. Once they submit their application, the applicant now has some legal protections. According to rules, they are supposed to be given duties that conflict as little as possible with their conscience while the case is pending. That's the good news. Bad news, many military commanders don't think that regulation applies to them. So sometimes I have to gently and sometimes not so gently remind commanders that no, you have to do this. So then we wait and wait and wait until we get a hearing. Before we do the hearing, though, 2 things happen. They have an interview with a military psychiatrist because, of course, in the military, you have to be crazy if you want to get out. So they first will have to make you talk to a military shrink. Then you have to talk to a chaplain. Both the military psychologist and the chaplain write reports. And then there's a hearing before an independent hearing officer. At that hearing, you can look a little bit like a court presentation. The hearing officer will ask questions of the applicant. You can call witnesses. You can be represented by counsel at that. So I'm there in person or via Zoom for those hearings. After that's done, and also that investigating officer does his or her own independent investigation. So they go out and talk to people. They don't just do a hearing. They actually go out and get in more information. And then at that point, then it goes up the chain of command. Every level of the chain of command can write their own report recommending approval or disapproval. And finally, it gets to a CO review board that exists at every military branch at the Pentagon. They make a ruling on it. Then it goes to the branch secretary. For instance, for the Army, it's the Secretary of the Army. So then either that person or their designee makes the final decision to discharge them. One other thing I should mention is what you have to prove is not easy. You have to prove that you are opposed to all wars. You can't be a selective conscientious objector. You can't say, oh, I'd fight in a just war like World War II. I won't fight in this bullshit war. That didn't work. You have to be opposed to all wars. You have to be opposed for either religious reasons or deep reasons of conscience that function in your life similar to that of a religious person. By the way, the right of secular Americans to claim CO status was hard fought through court battles during the Vietnam era. But today that right is protected. You do not have to be a religious person. Okay. You do not have to be a member of a peace church to get that status. You also have to prove that you're sincere and that your primary motivation for seeking the status is conscience. It's okay if you have other things, such as you have political beliefs, you have other things that may be going on in your life. That's fine, but the primary motivation has to be conscience. And finally, for someone in the military, you must prove that your beliefs crystallized or became fixed in form at some point after your enlistment. The reason is at MEPS, when you first go into the military, they ask you, are you a conscientious objector? And they don't explain to you what a conscientious objector is. But if you answer yes, you don't get to enlist. If you say no, later on, if you later say, oh, I always didn't believe in war, they'll say, well, you lied at enlistment. Therefore, it's fraudulent enlistment. We can criminally prosecute you for that. So
I didn't know that.
Oh, absolutely. It is possible. So you have to prove that your beliefs changed after you enlisted. Often it's a religious conversion. Sometimes it's a more deeper commitment to one's tradition. Sometimes it's a battlefield experience or something that happened in training. But you need to show, you have to demonstrate through this process how you got from point A, being I'm a member of the military, serving in conscience, to I don't believe in this anymore, I want out. You have to make that connection. So it's not an easy path, but it can be done. From what we know of from the Center for Conscience and Work, Quaker House, other groups that work with these folks, probably several hundred people a year are being discharged at this point on CO grounds.
Okay.
But it takes a long time. On average, from what I've seen, about a year is not uncommon at all. And in the meantime, you're often getting harassment and persecution from people in your unit. It can be pretty rough. So it does take some doing, but it can be done.
Okay.
That's pretty funny because they're saying like, oh, well, you lied to us. But I've seen videos of recruits at boot camp and they're passing their phone around, telling their stories like, what did the recruiter tell you? Oh, he said I would be out here in the Pacific, having a high time doing this. What did you say to you? They're laughing about it, but it's not funny because it's like, it seems like there's a double standard there too. It's like, don't you lie to us, but we can lie to you.
Oh, it's a one-way contract. And also, I'll say something else. The military enlistment agreement actually is not a contract. They don't use the word contract on it because it violates basic contract law. In contract law, if you create a contract where one party of the contract has the power to unilaterally change the terms of the agreement, it's not a contract. Now, you can put like triggering clauses. You can say, for instance, well, your interest rate on your mortgage is this amount, but if the prime rate goes up, it can be triggered up higher. Fine, but you can't have a mortgage, for instance, that says, yeah, the mortgage company just doesn't think you're paying enough money. We can just raise your interest rate just because we feel like it. You can't. That's an invalid contract. The military enlistment agreement does that because it says the rules governing you as a member of the military and the things you're subject to can be changed at any time by Congress. And notwithstanding what this document says, the law binds, which means, again, one party of the agreement can change it at will, the other one can't. So it's not even a legal contract. It's something else. It's its own monstrous creation.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Last week we did a segment on what's going on with Pentagon Pete and the Chaplain Corps. And that utterly stupid new listing of religion when they reduced it from over 200 different religious groups and sects down to something like around 31. And I know you and you've got your degree and you were in ministry yourself and you're an interfaith minister now. And of course I went to seminary and I made the point that among other things, this list has completely flattened the religious landscape in the United States. And you've got something that said it'll say Lutherans, but it doesn't define which Lutheran groups, because there are Lutheran groups that absolutely don't even recognize each other as being legitimate. And what this can do to service members who have religious beliefs. So I guess I got two questions here. How do you see Hegseth's attempts in this area to reform the Chaplain Corps? How do you see that potentially impacting the evaluation process for people who are seeking discharge on the basis of conscientious objective status? And I'll ask the next question after that, but what do you think right now?
Well, on that particular piece, I will say I'm not as worried as I'm about some of the other aspects of the chaplain, because on the current process, the chaplain interview is not a huge part of the process. The chaplain does write a report. It can go negative. Often what I do with my clients is I coach them for the understanding that you don't want to get into a theological argument with the chaplain. In fact, the best scenario is if you get a chaplain who's not of your tradition. If you get a chaplain who's from your tradition, it's going to be rocky because they're going to take personal offense that, say, if you're a Baptist and you're applying for CO, and then your chaplain is a Baptist, many of them will take special offense, like, how dare you that you're defaming Baptists by doing this? So that can be a really tricky thing, to say the
Okay.
least. But what I would say overall, when looking to broader issues, the chaplain corps, I don't think folks understand what Hegseth is doing. He is actually, from a legal standpoint, putting the entire chaplain corps at legal jeopardy under First Amendment analysis. The problem with the chaplains corps is, how do you create a system where you have government-funded religious ministers? That normally would not fly. That's an Establishment Clause violation.
Yeah.
So after a lot of litigation, a lot of conflict over the years, and also for a while, there was an argument being made, well, maybe there should not be any military chaplains. It'd be completely a voluntary thing that in other words, chaplains might be there, but they're not part of the military. The military said, no, we have to have, they need to be part of the military. So the compromise is that the chaplains actually have two commands, you might say. They have their denominational sponsor, in other words, their religious tradition that they're a part of, that ordains them, credentials them, that holds their credentials, and you're the military. And the military is supposed to be in charge of military functions, while the denominational sponsor is in charge of the religious side. And so, for a practical example of that would be, let's say that you're a very conservative evangelical chaplain, and your religious sponsor organization says you cannot preside over a same-sex wedding. What the military regs say is that the chaplain is allowed to decline the request to do that wedding, but the chaplain has an obligation then to refer to another chaplain who can. And the idea is, we've set up a pluralistic system that allows there to be multiple traditions, that allows referrals. Again, so particularly for smaller religious traditions, there may be only a few chaplains from that tradition in the whole military.
Right.
That's how it's supposed to work. What Hegseth has done is, by flattening that whole thing, by discouraging any even talk of religious diversity, and by the government effectively now defining what traditions are, what we've now created a situation, I would argue this is now a clear Establishment Clause issue. Right. We are now looking at where the government is trying to define what is and is not religion. And so at this point, I think if Hegseth, if he succeeds in doing this, I think the obvious challenge now is to challenge chaplains, the constitutionality of chaplains. And I think that'd be a mistake. But I also think it's inevitable if we don't fix this.
Yeah. That was one of the things that I brought up during our conversation last week. Is if you have a chaplain in there who, let's say, maybe Roman Catholic, there's a Roman Catholic chaplain, he's got to get pull a Baptist in, and let's say, for example, this is a Southern Baptist military family or a service member, and they bring in an American Baptist who happens to be a lesbian woman as chaplain. This is not going to go well, or vice versa. This is not going to go great for anybody here. And that was one of the things that I was just really rather stunned by seeing that flattening and just how poorly that was done. And of course, there was the whole debate over the LDS, whether they're Christians or not. But then I think about the Good Friday services at the Pentagon, which in which there was very narrow definition of who was allowed to officiate at those services, and Roman Catholics were not included. That there was no service offered there, and I found that just very unhinged.
It's really unhinged, particularly if you look at the current chaplain corps. The two biggest religious traditions represented are Baptists of all kinds and Roman Catholics. So to deny Roman Catholics as chaplains, as potential speakers for these events, is just bizarre. I mean, you're taking, again, for all the complaints I might have in some ways about chaplaincy and whatnot, the Roman Catholic Church has really put a lot of resources into making sure there's lots of Catholic chaplains. And so for the military to do this, for Hegseth to do this, it's just bizarre. It also, what it's really doing is also dumbing down the chaplains corps. One of the challenging things right now is that chaplains get their training from their tradition. When you when you enter into the military, when you do the chaplain training, a piece of that is learning now how to serve in a pluralistic context, how to be faithful to your tradition, but also operate in this understanding that most of the people you serve with will not be from your tradition, and how do you serve them effectively. So this now dumbed down list, what it's implying to chaplains who might be unfamiliar with the nuances of different traditions, like, oh, well, you can just smush all the Baptists together.
And the Presbyterians or the Lutherans. And Wisconsin Synods going to have a lot to say about the ELCA.
Exactly.
And the other thing that I thought was weird, and maybe you can comment on this, and we can talk about some other things, but was that many of the churches that were on that list, that remained on that list, were historic peace churches. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, well, why are there Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses and Church of the Brethren on this when they're historic peace churches? And the only thing I could think of is that there are people maybe from those traditions who aren't necessarily practicing, but who might enter the military. Is that the reason why they're on there?
That would be my guess. I mean, I will say that, are there members of traditional peace churches who are in the military? Yes, there are.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is different peace churches have different policies on this.
Okay.
I know, for instance, a Mennonite church that I'm an associate member of, that they actually have a policy that you're forbidden, that they do not allow members of the military to become members of the church unless they're in the process of being discharged. That's their theological. So there are some churches that would hold to that. A lot of other peace churches wouldn't deny someone membership, but they wouldn't be keen with them being in the military, but they wouldn't deny the membership. So there are people, but it's a very small number. And that's what's also weird, is that why do they single out some churches that have very small numbers of adherents as being a separate category, and other traditions that are fairly large? I mean, again, not differentiating between Southern Baptist and American Baptist is kind of incomprehensible to me.
Yeah.
Why are you leaving the UCC out of it? The
UCC, or the Disciples of Christ.
Yes, these are pretty
historic Christian denominations in this country, the Sister Seven.
And with chaplains, significant number of chaplains from those traditions. And so that's the other thing, is, for me, if you were a chaplain right now, I mean, I just have to say morale for the chaplain corps has to be bad right now. And I've had a few chaplains as clients over the years, by the way. Their morale wasn't very great before Hexeth. A lot of chaplains are very frustrated with the impossibility of their job, the lack of resources to do their job. And so now with Hexeth really, in many ways, undermining them and the traditions they come from, I don't understand the logic here. Hexeth keeps talking about wanting to he also, the other piece of it, he doesn't want chaplains to do their job. He keeps saying, we want them to talk about religious stuff, but not be about this emotional crap and spiritual readiness and all this. And it's like, it's really undermining everything the Chaplains Corps has been doing for the past 10 years, of really trying to deal with issues, for instance, of trauma.
Right.
And the fact that religion is often a piece of the puzzle for many people, how they work through trauma issues. Hexeth wants to ignore that. Hexeth doesn't want to recognize the realities that service members face and the things that they need to successfully serve.
And it seems that he's also trying to define how a clergy person ought to be defining their own vocation. And there are different understandings, and he's from a tradition that may not subscribe to the way other clergy people define their vocations within their faith tradition. I did want to move on a little bit, though. We've been talking about conscientious objectors and that sort of thing. Are there other cases, things that come up that for service members, maybe when it comes to things like medical care or things within their family issues or that sort of thing, that you work with as a GI lawyer?
A few areas. One I'll mention is combat veterans. Often one of the challenges for the military has had a long time a culture that has discouraged service members from seeking help when they have PTSD. And that the reality of it is, when someone goes on a combat deployment, a significant percent, everyone is affected by trauma. Everyone comes back having been traumatized and having to heal from that. Now, most people going through that will work through those issues. The majority will. A significant percentage will not, but those who do not, we have pretty good evidence now to show that people that get intervention quickly are more likely to heal from it and to be doing better in the long run. Those who do not get treatment quickly, it often escalates. And so really, and also the military doesn't just discourage it, say, well, you know, it'll hurt you for promotions. It shows you've been talking to a counselor. They'll do things like that. But they'll also do things. One of the most terrible stories I heard was during the deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan a decade or so ago. I remember had clients tell me that when they got off the plane, they were told, okay, in the other room are your families. Now, we need you to fill out this questionnaire first to show if you have any symptoms of PTSD. If you check yes on any of these boxes, you're going to go this other direction and you'll talk to the mental health people. And you'll see your family at some point later. Or you check no, I have no problem to see your family now. What do you bet that everyone checks no to see their family? Of course they do. And then a week later, they start having problems. And they talk to someone about it. And they said, well, you didn't have any problems. You got off the plane. We have it here. You checked the box. You had no problems. And then they said, we don't believe you. You're a slacker. You're trying to get out of work. And so service members, this happens to them. Has happened to them so many times that it creates a dynamic that they just bottle it up. They don't get help. And then so then what happens next? Misconduct happens next because people can't hold it together. They start drinking too much. They start using drugs. They start beating their spouses. Domestic violence is directly, I'm convinced in a lot of cases, domestic violence in a military context is often the underlying cause of it, besides patriarchy and all that. The other piece of it is undealt with PTSD. And so it creates this really toxic situation. But I've worked with service members who have, because of these issues, I could tell you lots of stories about the horror stories that basically the problem is that people start having misconduct issues. They get a DUI, they get other problems. And now the military, what they want to do is throw people out. They want to prosecute them, potentially throw them in jail, and then kick them out with a bad discharge. So my job is to convince the decision makers, first of all, the commander, to say, you don't want to bring charges. This is a dumb decision. You need to instead get this service member help. They need help, and you get them help, they're going to be a good soldier. You're going to be able to keep them in the unit if you get them help. If you don't get them help, it's going to go badly. So we try to persuade the commander to have a heart, and particularly those, I better luck, honestly, with commanders who've actually seen combat. They're a little more.
Okay.
The ones who don't, they're the obstinate ones. But then when we can't get the commander to back down, then it's about the judge. And at the judge, when we're in a court martial for misconduct, my job is to say, yes, this service member did X, Y, and Z. We can't contest, you got them on camera doing this or whatever. Yeah. The evidence might be pretty damning, but we say, but you got to look at the mitigating, extenuating factors. And so even though, and again, sometimes we're lucky. Sometimes there's something that actually rises to the level of a legal defense that negates guilt itself. More often what I'm doing is arguing mitigation, extenuation, trying to get the best outcome possible. But to give you an idea of the hard choices we make, I had a case with a guy with severe PTSD. He was having dissociative events, was all kinds of problems. And in the end, what we had to argue, we could not get them to give us a reasonable plea deal. So we had to argue basically, please give my client jail time, but not the dishonorable discharge, because he can handle jail. He can't handle being thrown out of the military without VA care. And that's a rotten thing to have to argue. And yet it truly was the best thing we could do in that case. And so there's that. Physical health issues are also a recurring problem. The military, what they want to do as much as possible is if they can't fix the problem, then they want to say it's a pre-existing issue. If it's a pre-existing issue, then they don't have to pay benefits. And they want to try to make all mental health issues a pre-existing issue. They're going to do their dead level best to do that. I even had recently someone who they're claiming it's a pre-existing issue, but they actually admitted that he's having symptoms from trauma, but they will not use the word PTSD because they don't want him to get any kind of benefits for PTSD. So it's a really frustrating area of law from that standpoint, because we're dealing with an institution that is not acting in good faith, that really wants to discourage anything that would involve the payout of benefits. They want to what they really want to do is get people to shut up, do their job, and if they can't do their job, they want to kick them out as quickly as possible in a way that they don't pay benefits, and it's rotten.
And and if you don't have a good discharge, that can follow you, I know, in different ways. I mean, if you're trying to get a job, and that sort of thing can really mess with your life. And
one of the things I'll mention is that what they'll often do is that there's 5 levels of discharges: honorable, general, other than honorable, a bad conduct discharge, and a dishonorable discharge. The bottom 2 can only be given through courts martial. They constitute sometimes a criminal conviction. So what they often do when they don't have enough evidence to take someone to trial, something is court-martialable, they'll instead give them an administrative separation, and they'll stick them with the other than honorable separation. That other than honorable separation, what it means is, number one, the serviceman will not get their GI Bill that they've worked hard for. Sometimes we get lucky. If they've re-enlisted, then we can rely upon their first enlistment term to get GI Bill. But otherwise, if they're in first enlistment, they take anything other than an honorable, they don't get GI Bill. If they get a general, they still get access to a lot of their VA benefits. But if they only get the other than honorable, it's nearly impossible to get VA benefits, with a few exceptions. If you're a combat veteran, you can jump through some hoops. You can potentially get benefits eventually, but it's a very difficult process. And again, what I'm seeing over and over again is often the most vulnerable veterans are the ones getting the bad paper, who are getting these bad discharges that really do impact them. That's the bad news. I'll say the good news is employers are starting to realize that military discharges don't really tell you that much in the end of it. Whether someone is a bad discharge in the military doesn't say they're going to be a bad employee. So I would say that piece of it is less of a problem than it used to be, thankfully. But the big issue is it's the VA benefits.
Okay. And Warren, do you have any other questions for James right now? I have one last question I'd like to ask him, but
yeah, go for it.
If somebody were to come to you and say, my child wants to go into the military, and they're not even talking about, we're not talking bad home life or anything like that, but a person who may be just idealistic, wants to serve their country, wants to join the military. What advice would you give them from a legal perspective?
Sure. The first thing I would say is, if we're a young person considering the military, is I would encourage them to talk to veterans.
Okay.
Particularly recent veterans, not from 20 years ago, talking about and more recently, to ask them, what did their recruiter tell them and what was real life like? That's going to be the first thing I would say. Second thing I would say is that if at all possible, encourage the young person to not sign anything while they're at the recruiter's office, but rather ask the recruiter, can I take home the military enlistment agreement for my parents and other people to look at? The recruiter will do their dead level best to make sure that document doesn't leave the building. That should be a sign right there that's the bad thing to do. But if they do leave the building, then I would recommend read that in detail, particularly the part that talks about that they can change the terms of the agreement at any time. And to remember, you got to read it from the standpoint of reading it in a way that is looking for your interest first and foremost. Ask, and under what conditions then this thing be extended? Also note there, they will say, even if your recruiter promises you X, Y, and Z, if it's not written on this paper, those promises are not binding. And so ask yourself, based upon that document, are you willing to sign up for what's potentially about 8 years of your life? The active duty obligation, usually the most common scenario is 4 years of active duty obligation, 4 years of individual ready reserve obligation is a real common one, which means they can call you back after your active duty service. And so to say, am I willing to sign up for this for 8 years, to be on the hook, to be what they want? So that would be my recommendation. For people locally, I'll say in Oklahoma, I have told families, like, hey, if your kid can get that enlistment agreement home, I'll give them a free consultation. I will talk to them as an attorney about what they're really signing. And my experience, when people actually do that, they decide they don't want to do it anymore. So that's the good news. One other thing I'll throw out there, though, that we haven't talked about today, but I did want to mention this is really important. There's a big change coming in U.S. law that's going to affect a lot of young people. At the end of this year, the selective service system as we know it today will not exist anymore. Instead of sending in the card when you turn 18, what they're going to do is it's going to be an automatic draft registration system. Now, for people in many states, this has effectively already been the case. In states like Oklahoma, you can't get your driver's license if you're male. When you sign to get your driver's license, you're signing a document saying, I'm consenting for my information to be sent to the selective service. Which means some people, including some of my loved ones, are not getting their driver's license right now because they don't want that thing to be sent in, which is ridiculous. You have to do that. Some states don't do that. Some states do. But what they've done instead, by scrapping that whole system, automatic registration, it means that the federal government is going to use commercial databases. They're going to use all the craziness they got during the Doge time to build up a new database. And that's what it's going to be based upon. The problem is we have not seen the implementing regulations for this. It is June 17th. This is supposed to be in place in December. That's one of the concerns that for people that are concerned about these issues, like why don't they even have the implementing regulations yet? What is this going to look like? And so because of that, I think there's a higher risk at this moment of a potential draft than there has been in quite a while. The fact that they're pushing this automatic draft registration and some other things. And so one of the things I've been involved with, and some other folks as well, is getting ready for the possibility of a draft. And one of the big needs is for the issue of for there being trained draft counselors. During the Vietnam era, there were people from all walks of life who helped young people to consider their options and either to seek status as a CO or to seek some other exemption. We're going to need that again. And so there's a website I'll mention, draftcounseling.org. And on that website, we have 2 videos already that start the process of training ordinary people of how to be a draft counselor. We have a 3rd training that'll be coming later this summer. But I'm encouraging people, particularly people from the Peace Church traditions, to do these trainings. Watch the videos. It's going to give you everything you need to get started in this work. And the idea is, again, and especially bear in mind too, a lot of young people who might not have registered for the draft, it's off their radar screen, and they live in a state where they didn't get automatically registered through their state. In January, February, March, they're going to start getting notices in the mail saying, you've been registered with the Selective Service. These young people are going to be flipping out and like, what now? Again, being registered doesn't mean you're being drafted, but it does mean it's a whole lot easier to draft you, and it's putting people on the radar screen that weren't there before. And so I would argue now is the time for people to get trained as draft counselors, and also for young people. Now is the time to document your grounds for an exemption. Okay. For instance, if you're just graduated school, let's say you had a learning disability, you had an IEP, individual educational plan. You need to get that. Get it on paper, because that could exempt you from the draft. You need to talk to your doctor. Do you have a medical condition, such as if you're autistic, you're neurodiverse? That can get you out of the draft, getting that documentation. If you are a conscientious objector, if you say, I would not fight for reasons of conscience, write your essays now. And I'm serious about that. One of the things that I also recommend is for parents. Often young people, it's hard to get them to take seriously the risks they might be facing right now. So what you can do instead is, when your kid does something out of because of their beliefs, but if they go to a protest, take pictures of them at the protest.
Social media postings?
Absolutely. Document that, because one of the criteria in the draft context for conscientious objection is, are you sincere? Right. The best way to prove sincerity is that your beliefs long predated the war in question. And so all that are things right now anybody can do to help the young adults in their life to be ready for a potential draft. One last thing I'll mention is that I think even the more pressing issue is a special skills draft. This was last done during the Vietnam era when doctors were drafted. Remember the old TV show MASH? Remember Winchester? He did not like the fact he was being drafted. These are people could be drafted up to age 45 under the current rules if you're a medical professional. But we also know from a recent Freedom of Information Act request my friend Edward Hasbrook's received back from the government. The Selective Service is actually looking at expanding the definition of who's subject to a special skills draft. They're looking at potentially IT professionals in particular that might be subject to a special skills draft. So we're talking about people up to age 45 who could be drafted for no other reason that you got education, you have skills. Well, the military wants you, so for people, we're not just talking about 18 to 26-year-olds. We're really talking about anyone up to about age 45. And again, current rules, it's males, but especially for a special skills draft, I have no doubt they'd change the rules in a heartbeat to draft as well. So I would argue if you're under age 45, if you have medical skills, IT skills, anything else the government might want, now's the time to document why you should be exempt too.
That is really helpful, James. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's put up your website one more time, girightslawyer.com. And you're based out of Oklahoma, but do you deal with people outside of your area? Or is it just local? How does that work?
I practice nationwide, and I have a few clients overseas. U.S. service members stationed all around the world. We have military bases all over the place. So I do represent people in lots of places. Time zones get tricky, you know, that sometimes is the tricky part. My client station in Korea in particular, that's always a challenging one. But yeah, I do work with people nationwide. I'll also mention, though, the Military Law Task Force is an organization that I'm a part of. And if you're out there and you're looking for legal counsel, I always recommend reaching out to them, because they can help you to find you a lawyer in your area. For instance, there's some branches of the military I don't have as much experience with, so I encourage people to look elsewhere. I may not be their best fit. So I always say check with the Military Law Task Force is a great place. But also there's a lot of self-help resources and all kinds of good stuff on their websites, nlgmltf.org.
And just a reminder to folks watching this in the future or right now, all these links are going to be in our Substack for you. So you'll have those links and you can look at these sites in detail. So James, we appreciate it. It's been a fascinating conversation. Hopefully you'll come back on later. Because I'm with you. I don't think it's the Department of Defense anymore. I think it is the Department of Empire. And I don't really think we've been defending this country really since World War II. Everything else seems to be police actions and stuff like that. And I'm not hammering on people who are in the military now, because a lot of those people, like I said, were sold a bill of goods. Absolutely. And it's good that there's people like you out there to kind of help clear the waters for them and give them the help that they need.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This is a really good conversation.
Again, thank you so much, James. And anytime. And by the way, if something comes up, and it doesn't even have to be about military law, but if something comes up of interest, you want to talk about it on the show, do not wait for an invitation.
Okay.
Just ping me and we'll get you on. Don't worry about it.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James.
Awesome.
Well,
well, that was fascinating.
Yeah.
I did not know about. I mean, I just didn't know a lot of that stuff.
I didn't either. And I was really curious about the conscientious objector portion of that, because like I said, there's been these recruiters. I'm not saying all of them do this, but it has been known for recruiters to lie to people just to get their numbers up, because they have quotas to get people into the military. And it's like they don't really take the best interest of the recruit into mind, whereas they just kind of just look at them like they're a number, but they treat them like they're the best thing ever. And it's like, we really need you, come on board. And then once you're in, it's like, we got you. So,
remember Private Benjamin, that movie with Goldie Hawn? A long time ago. And that was something that happened to her. And it was even a big part of the movie, that she had been taken in by this recruiter, and she thought she was going to get live in these great condos and everything else like that. And it was it was a big part of the story, at least initially.
When they offer you condos in the military, you probably know it's BS.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good that he's doing that. There needs to be more people out there helping to navigate the waters for these young people who are thinking about service. Because a lot of times it is, like he said, the handful of people maybe is for patriotism, but for the most part is people trying to, get the GI Bill, or maybe they need
stability. You come from a chaotic home or a chaotic background. And the military, that kind of structure, you can build on that. The problem is that you may also be sent into an utterly chaotic war. Or police action, whatever you want to call it, that will mess you up far worse than your family ever did. Yeah.
So any young people who are watching, I'm not saying don't go into the military, although I should, but I would say just be very, very, very skeptical and ask a lot of questions and read all the fine print before you go into the military. So, so that was good stuff. I'm pretty sure we'll, as things progress with these wars that are going on, I'm sure this ain't going to be the only war that happens. Probably not even within, Trump still got 2.5 years. Who else is he going to pick a war with?
Oh man, James, thank you for this. Don't even get me started on military housing. I can tell horror stories about the toxic mold that is present at the barracks in both Fort Riley, Kansas and Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Yeah, That doesn't
Oh,
surprise
yeah.
me one bit. And when you were talking about the healthcare issue, it reminded me of private insurers. Oh, it's a pre-existing condition.
Yeah.
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 There
That's
may
why
be
you
some
need a
up.
lawyer like James to because it's not like it used to be where you just sign up and you go in and that's it. And now there's all kinds of stuff there. And I know there's Camp when he was talking about here. There's also Camp Lejeune, the what is it, the Marine camp that had like the poison water or something was in the drinking water or something too. Yeah, they had like commercials about it for like class action lawsuits and stuff like that too. So it's just be careful. That's all. Let's from getting screwed to screw worms. How you like that segue? We get to the recurring tide. Put your waders on. So this is a fun story about this. So this is from Common Dreams. Elon Musk should pay for this. Why? We'll talk about that in a second. Trump administration says it needs $1 billion to combat screwworm. I thought he was the
We talked about him last week. I'm glad to see some progress on this story.
So when Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, aka DOGE, took his chainsaw to the federal bureaucracy last year, it created bottlenecks that may have hampered the fight against the screwworm infestation currently menacing the Southwest while making it much more expensive. The annual USDA spending to combat the flesh-eating insects only amounted to about $15 million per year, but along with about $382 million aimed at combating animal-borne illnesses around the globe, it was terminated in March last year as part of DOGE's effort to root out what is described as government waste. How's that funny? But now with the pests bearing down on Texas and New Mexico, and at least 12 infections already identified in the U.S. as of yesterday, the Trump administration is spending at least $1 billion to fight the outbreak. Last week during a Senate hearing, Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins attempted to shift blame for the screwworm outbreak onto the Biden administration while portraying herself and President Trump as proactive in response to reports last spring that the insects were rapidly climbing through Central America. Rollins said she asked Trump for $1 billion to build a significant facility in Texas that would breed hundreds of millions of sterilized male screwworm flies. What could possibly go wrong? A method that had been used to keep them contained in South America for decades. Without hesitation, a couple questions, he said, go. That facility is expected to release around 300 million sterile flies per week, but it is not expected to be fully operational until the end of 2027. In addition to the $15 million cut to monitoring the spread of the bugs from Panama, the Houston Chronicle reported that DOGE paused plans for a facility in Mexico that the Biden administration had authorized in 2024 as part of a $165 million emergency package to fight screwworm. I just like saying screwworm. Amid mass layoffs at the USDA, it reported that funding for the facility, which was supposed to produce between 60 to 100 million sterile flies per week, was not announced until May of last year, while the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, or APHIS, see what they did there? See, APHIS, because it's in. Yeah. Still says fly production at the facility is expected to begin as early as summer 2026. It is still listed as under construction. Kevin Shea, who served as administrator of APHIS under the Obama administration and retired from the agency in January 2025, told the Chronicle that efforts to contain the screwworm were put on hold at the start of Trump's second term. This administration came in so skeptical of the career people, they didn't really want to listen, he said. The holdup in the money going to Mexico for the sterile fly facility was most likely caught up in the whole DOGE thing. It probably looked like some sort of foreign aid. Journalist Christopher Collins wrote in the Texas Observer yesterday that additionally, deep staffing cuts to APHIS, which lost nearly 1,900 employees during Trump's first year back in office, eliminated, quote, the first line of defense against incoming parasites. Too bad it didn't defend against that parasite coming into office, right? Who are responsible for inspecting the cattle awaiting import from Mexico to ensure No screwworms are hitching a ride. Ride, hitching a ride. As the spread of screwworm across cattle country threatens to further drive up beef prices that have already increased by over 20% since Trump returned to office, critics of the administration are seizing on it to highlight the failure of the president's so-called efficiency initiative, which, despite the grandeur of Musk's cost-cutting claims, ended up costing taxpayers an estimated $165 billion, according to an April 2026 report from the Nonpartisan Partnership for Public Service. Cue the sad trombone. Representative Pramila Jayapal called the screwworm saga a prime example of Doge's peak incompetence. Trump and Musk's Doge saved $15 million by cutting a program dedicated to preventing the spread of screwworm, she said. Now there's an outbreak infecting our beef, and the administration is spending $1 billion. Yeah, the math doesn't really math very well there. Reacting to the news that the government was spending at least $1 billion to confront the screwworm crisis, Dropsite News co-founder Ryan Grimm wrote on social media, "Not joking, but Elon Musk should have to pay for this, right? You broke it," he said, tagging the man who recently became the world's first trillionaire. Why do we all have to pay for it? Indeed. Doge. We were thinking about, like, you make these cuts like this, there's going to be consequences. And sure enough, this is one of them.
Yeah, indeed. And as I reported last week, the screwworm is just a really nasty infestation that causes painful wounds in cattle, and of course is going to make the price of beef go up at a time when we're already seeing a whole lot of food inflation. Yeah.
And we'll see how many other shoes fall because of that nonsense of cutting when they didn't really need to cut any of that stuff. No. All that was virtue signaling on their part, and to see, look, we're doing something about cutting government. But the real stuff that they need to cut, of course, they
made it sound absurd. They were saying, oh, there's all this money is going to sterilize these insects. And we're thinking about, okay, we've now got family planning for insects. What a waste of money. Well, there was actually a very good reason for this, which they weren't allowing the scientists to explain to the general public.
Yeah, at least do a thorough study on it before you decide to make those cuts.
You ask a person, why are you doing this? What is the purpose of this? Well, you see, if we don't do this, cattle get these terrible wounds and injuries, and that drives the price of food up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just a thought.
Exactly. That was the thing. He didn't investigate any of that stuff before he cut.
He just went on it and just cut everything off.
Because he's an out of touch trillionaire. Well, he was a billionaire at the time. He's an out of touch trillionaire, and it seems like that hubris and saying, "Well, I know better." It's like you don't know what these things are actually for until you actually, investigate it. And investigating. It looks bad on its face. Let's just cut it. Speaking of bad, this is why we should not let AI near anybody's hospitals at all. This is terrible. So a woman dies after AI hospital delay. The family of a Brazilian patient says doctors were overruled by a state-run bed allocation system. This is in Brazil. The family of a Brazilian woman who died after waiting several days for an intensive care bed has blamed a new AI-powered state system for downgrading the severity of her condition and delaying her transfer. Rebecca Cardoso Tenente Molina, a 32-year-old psychologist from Minas Gerais. Some of these are Portuguese-sounding names and stuff, so I'm probably going to butcher the hell out of them. My apologies in advance. Sought treatment earlier this month for what was believed to be gallstones. Her condition quickly deteriorated, and doctors soon concluded she needed urgent transfer to an intensive care unit, an ICU. However, the new state-run Core MG bed regulation platform reportedly failed to treat her case as critical enough, despite Molina's relatives going to court to try to force a faster transfer. The bed was found only about 5 days later, around 300 kilometers away. Molina was flown there by private plane, but died hours later. Her death certificate lists septic shock as the cause of death, but doctors are still trying to determine what triggered her rapid deterioration. Doctors lost the autonomy to decide if a patient is very seriously ill. Molina's twin sister and lawyer, Samela Cardosa Tenente Furtado, told the media, she said the AI system gave Molina a severity score of 6.8, despite her family's belief that she should have been treated as a 10. A patient at 8, a patient at 6.9 would jump ahead of her, Furtado said, adding that the AI-powered platform would not accept a higher level despite worsening test results. My sister, other people are not just numbers. They are not just protocols. They are not just a CPF. That's Brazil's taxpayer ID thrown into the system, she said. The core MG system was introduced last month, with state officials stating it would make bed allocation faster and more transparent while helping classify patients by severity. Yes, trusting AI for serious stuff like that. Shame on you. The Minas Gerais Health Department has denied that the system harmed Molina, saying she was registered immediately and that transfers depend on bed availability and not clinical needs, and also said regulation remains overseen by doctors and that Core MG did not change clinical criteria or the method for finding beds. The rollout has nevertheless drawn criticism and legal challenges from local authorities who argue it has disrupted patient transfers. Molina's case comes amid broader concerns about AI integration into healthcare. In the U.S., insurers have recently faced lawsuits over alleged algorithmic claim denials, while nurses in New York have warned about hospitals rushing to deploy AI tools without sufficient input or oversight from healthcare workers. AI strikes again. Let's keep that away from the hospitals and healthcare in general.
Yeah, let's keep insurers away from hospitals too. Just a thought.
Exactly. What's up, game.com? Yeah, let's do that. Those bloodsuckers. Back in the day, bloodsuckers were a medical treatment.
They were. They used them, the leeches, and
yeah. Nowadays, not so much with that. So, but that's the thing. It's like AI is relatively new, right? I understand if a small business wants to use AI as kind of like something that can not necessarily replace their employees, but use something as a tool. Like we always say, if you use it as a tool, it's fine. But when you allow AI to make life and death situations, literally in this case, no, you can't do that.
AI is not a physician.
Are you a smoker or are you just smoking?
Not a smoker, but this story, I found this story and like, oh boy.
Yeah, well, if you're smoking, you might get charged. So that's why ugly people like me don't have to worry about that. Some hotels are charging guests for smoking, even if they didn't. That's beautiful. Imagine returning home from a relaxing vacation only to discover an unexpected charge on your credit card statement, a fee for smoking in your hotel room. As more hotels adapt smoke-free policies and air quality monitoring technology, complaints about wrongful smoking fees have become increasingly common. What's worse, the fees can appear days after checkout, making them difficult to dispute and leaving travelers in a lurch. Here's why these charges happen and the steps you can take to prevent them in the first place. While policies vary by hotel, at most properties these days, all forms of smoking are typically prohibited indoors, including tobacco, cannabis, and e-cigarettes. Charges or vapes, I guess it's the same thing.
Or incense, as a matter of fact. But
yeah, anything smoky, no. Charges generally range from $250 to $500 per violation, depending on the property, room size, and extent of the housekeeping work required. These fees help hotels recoup the loss of deep cleaning, which includes removing residue, stains, and lingering odors. According to one company that specializes in smoke odor removal, wow, that you specialize in smoke odor removal. That's pretty niche. Even minor smoke damage can cause hundreds of dollars and take several days to resolve. This is one reason why in recent years, most major hotel brands have shifted towards smoke-free policies. In January 2006, Westin became the first to implement a 100% smoke-free policy. across all U.S. locations, followed by Marriott later that year. As of this year, at least 6 states and 260 U.S. cities, including Atlanta, New Orleans, and Indianapolis, require all hotels to be 100% smoke-free indoors. Some also restrict smoking in most outdoor areas. While these industry-wide smoke-free policies are good news for most customers, they can prove to be problematic for those who encounter surprise fees. Hotels rely on a combination of housekeeping reports, guest complaints, and air quality monitoring systems to detect violations, but none of these methods is foolproof. Residual odors may remain from previous guests or creep in from nearby rooms or exterior windows, for example. Like maybe you have the door open on your, and you have maybe like some sort of balcony or something. Maybe it floats in that way. To complicate matters even further, several major chains have begun using advanced air quality sensors that can detect smoke particles and chemical changes associated with cigarettes, marijuana, and vapor-based products. While these systems are designed to exclusively report on smoking activity, some non-smoking travelers claim they have received unfair charges due to these services. Concerns about faulty sensors. Yeah. Exactly. So stories of faulty smoke sensors leading to false smoking fees have been circulating in the news as of late. In 2025, 8 News Now Las Vegas spoke with Mary Ferguson, a former health educator who led tobacco cessation programs, about a surprise $419 smoking fee on her credit card bill after a trip to Vegas. According to hotel management, an air quality monitoring device classified the room air as hazardous, indicating that occupants were smoking. Ferguson maintains that she and her husband were not smoking and no violations were communicated during their stay. The fee initially appeared on the couple's bill, but it was later waived after the local news station launched an investigation into the case. Funny how that works out when you put some sunshine on it. Like, we didn't mean that. Sorry. So cases like Ferguson's have raised questions about how smoke detecting devices work and how some hotels verify violations across the country. Other travelers who have experienced similar situations were not given the opportunity to dispute the charges and have not yet been refunded. So it says here how to protect yourself. Let me go through this real quick. So protecting yourself from those fees starts at check-in. When entering a hotel room, immediately inspect the space and take pictures of anything that might suggest prior smoking, such as stains, burn marks, or ash residue. Or if you're at like a Motel 8 or something, just make sure the walls don't have like two-way mirrors. You probably want to check that too, just in case. If the room smells smoky, notify the front desk immediately and request that your complaint be documented. Yeah, so get it in writing right off the top. Like, look, this stuff smells like an old cigar in here, and we didn't do it. During your stay, it may also help to minimize anything that could potentially interfere with air quality monitors. According to manufacturers, these systems are not designed to react to ordinary airborne toiletries or heat from hair tools. Still, some travelers who disputed smoking fees reported using aerosol sprays, heat styling tools, or heavily scented products. Turning on fans and opening windows during use may help, but the safest option may be to avoid them altogether. And then it goes on here, like what to do if you receive a smoking violation. But that just seems like
it's a gotcha. Look, I have traveled enough. In a previous life, I traveled a lot on business. And it happened in some very nice hotels that they would suddenly put charges on your account that you did not you did not request. I remember being one place, my one of the superiors in my company, we had like 3 of us from the same company were getting erroneous charges. And as they point out here also, a lot of people do automatic checkout. You just check, you give your credit card or your debit card, and then you walk out, you just leave. And you may not even think to be reviewing these charges. And the other thing they pointed out here is that they're not doing anything during the stay to mitigate this. If they see something pop up indicating that it would make sense to send somebody from security or housekeeping to the room to enforce, to prevent extensive damage, but also they would be able to document if something else is going on. They're saying, this particular article said, well, don't use aerosols or heat tools. You're traveling. You need to maintain your grooming routine.
Yeah.
I mean, this just strikes me as a win for hotel chains that can, they can nickel and dime you, which they are already doing. They're nickeling and diming you and making it harder for you to waive that. If you've got somebody who's on an expense account, they can go for the corporation that's the employer. But this is just, I think, another way to nickel and dime and intimidate people. And there's got to be a better way. At the very least, having a process in place that when this is detected, you contact the guest and say, this is happening, it needs to stop. The guest says, I'm not doing anything. Then something can be documented and investigated. But that's not happening.
Yeah, this just seems like a lazy way to enforce that kind of thing. And yeah, well, like you send security up to the room to investigate, to let them go in.
Is something on fire? I mean, is there a fire in this hotel?
Yeah, if you're going to send security, that's what security is supposed to do, to investigate anything that's, off of what they is supposed to be happening. Right?
And it also lets the hotel know whether their system actually works or whether it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they've been sold a bad detection system, they need to know that.
Or it could be just a good excuse to, as they do in speed traps, just to get you just to nickel and dime you too. Mm-hmm. I do like the fact that if you walk into a hotel room, like whenever you walk into any new room, right, that mm-hmm. you're not used to the smell of, that smell is going to hit you, especially if you're a non-smoker. That's going to hit you. So you should definitely report that right away and say, hey, look, somebody's been up in here doing some, smoking the ganja or whatever, and it wasn't us. Chuck said I should be able to barbecue ribs in my hotel room without getting hit with a smoking fee. Barbecue, yes, but if you're smoking ribs, you're literally smoking, and shame on you. Although I do appreciate your moxie in trying to smoke ribs at a hotel. So
you could have a cord. You could have a faulty cord somewhere. That does that. I mean, there are just so many different things that could trigger something. And you notice we're not really seeing a description of how these sensor systems work. They're not setting off smoke detectors, for example. So there's something else going on. This is not making a whole lot of sense to me, other than that hotels are banking on people not challenging these charges,
right,
and getting away with this.
And that's the thing too. What if they do? What they not only do they clap back and say, look, not only did I not do this, I'm suffering some sort of emotional damage from having to deal with this. They could be countersued. And then end up even, paying even more for a faulty system that they have no intention of checking, it seems like.
Well, the credit card companies, I think, also need to get in on this and saying, look, if one of our card members is paying with this card, you don't have the right to abuse our card number here. So that's what I think should be happening.
Yeah. I mean, it may be like litigation or more people clapping back. That may be the only thing that can do that. And because a lot of these corporate hotels, they just don't care. Like your smaller, like bed and breakfast and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure they would probably, be a little bit more on top of seeing what's wrong in there. Why is there a smoke problem in there and stuff like that? So.
Well, they're not going to have these sensor systems. Although I do hear with these stupid Airbnbs that this kind of thing does happen, because you've got the Airbnb owner, again, who wants to take advantage of the situation. But it shouldn't be happening. Yeah.
So this is wait, is this part of the thing? Okay. So Trump's doing this ballroom thing, and there seems to be some sort of discrepancy on who's actually paying for it. So Trump planned to spend $300 million in taxpayer dollars or federal funds on ballroom while claiming it was privately funded. What? Trump lied about that? That's a shock. Internal documents show that Trumpy was lying when he said taxpayers would not be footing the bill for his massive White House ballroom. Reiterating what he'd already said countless times, the president claimed in March that the project was taxpayer-free and entirely funded by private donors who'd spend $400 million to build it in the now demolished East Wing of the White House. But at the time he made these comments, he knew that was untrue. The Washington Post reported yesterday that a detailed project summary made 3 weeks earlier showed the total construction cost at $600 million, with more than half of the funds coming from taxpayers. The Post continued, by the time Trump made his comments in March, the federal government had already approved more than a dozen payments to the contractor overseeing the work, Clark Construction, totaling tens of millions of dollars in public funds, according to a log of the contractor's invoices obtained by the Post. Multiple project summaries provided to the White House by Clark Construction show that internal cost estimates have been significantly higher than administration officials have acknowledged in public comments or court filings. What? These contractors up on the price on something? That sounds, I've never heard of that. They also showed that the work was projected to rely heavily on taxpayer dollars from the moment it was announced. According to the March 5th estimate reviewed by the Post, $293 million worth of funding is coming from donors, many of whom have received new or extended federal contracts over the past 6 months. Look at that. The rest of the money comes from taxpayer-funded sources. $155 million would come from the Secret Service, $149 million from the White House Military Office, and $3 million from the executive residence. In May, Republicans in Congress proposed an additional $1 billion from taxpayers to fund security adjustments and upgrades for which Trump has said will be comprised of a subterranean six-story bunker, complete with everything from bomb shelters to military medical facilities and a base to launch unlimited numbers of drones. I guess they learned something in the Iran war. It's like, wait, if we put all our shit underground, boy, we could probably do a lot of stuff. Although that funding was ultimately excluded from the bill, taxpayer money is still being used through agency accounts. Post reporting shows the claim that the ballroom would not use taxpayer dollars has been repeated by other Republicans in Congress, including the usual suspect, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who described it in May as totally privately funded. Long nose. You know what that's for. Asked by a reporter on Tuesday about the Post's revelations, Senate Majority Leader John Thune contradicted this assurance, acknowledging that there is certainly some expectation that there would be dollars allocated that would go above and beyond the private money that's been raised. Certainly some expectation. Like, no, you don't get, it's a lie, dude. White House spokesperson Davis Engel told the Post that President Trump and generous American patriots are funding the ballroom to the tune of approximately $400 million, which will be a secure and appropriate venue for presidents for generations to come. He did not address questions about the taxpayer funding or the cost of the project. The news has put many Republicans, particularly those who voted to cut taxpayer-funded social welfare programs in the name of fiscal prudence, in an uncomfortable position. Well, they should be. Asked about the revelations by a reporter from Dropsite News, Senator John Kennedy out of Louisiana scoffed, "You believe everything in the Washington Post?" It's like, well, numbers don't lie, stupid. Stating he had not seen the report, he said, "I'm sure they have anonymous sources." That's how he talks. I'm just saying that. It's Louisiana guy. Notably, the White House itself did not dispute the Post story, nor did the story rely on anonymous sources. Others fell back on the White House's security justification, as if he was supporting using taxpayer dollars for the project. Senator Rick Scott, that little bald-headed snake guy out of Florida, responded, I support protecting the president, and said he supports funding for more Secret Service agents, something like that. Yeah, Mr. Captain specific right there. The spending outlined in the Post story does not include funding for more agents. So Snake Guy was lying. Public citizen democracy advocate John Gollinger called for an immediate investigation by Congress following revelations that taxpayer money was being spent. The secret records reveal that Trump's ballroom is being built on a foundation of lies, fraud, and corruption. Well, that's not a very stable foundation. We are also calling for an investigation to uncover the names and actions of every Trump White House and administration official who was involved in this plot to circumvent congressional approval and spent unauthorized taxpayer dollars on Trump's ballroom. Gollinger said the unauthorized use of taxpayer money could violate the Anti-Deficiency Act, which makes executive office officials who engage in unlawful taxpayer spending schemes personally and potentially criminally liable for their actions. Representative Greg Cesar, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, said the unauthorized use of taxpayer funds was a huge scandal. They cut your health care while spending tax dollars on a golden bathroom for Trump, he said, and they lied about it. So, yeah, surprise, surprise, not really that he lied about that. I wonder why he really wants that ballroom anyway.
You notice in that original photo, it was a photo taken last year, but Triple H was in there in that photo.
Oh, really? The wrestler?
Yeah. And his mother-in-law, of course, is part of Trump's cabinet. Secretary
Who's his mother-in-law?
Linda McMahon, Secretary of Education.
Oh, that's his mother-in-law? Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Keeping it in the WWF family, I guess. But
WWE, remember, it changed after the World Wildlife
It'll always
Federation.
be WWF.
I understand it. Well, it used to be the Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it contracted, and then there was the lawsuit. So,
yeah, I mean, when you're talking about federal funds going to something like this, to me, it just seems like Trump is just a scared little boy person, right? He's just scared. So him building this first, and him being just so adamant about getting this thing built, he must know something is coming. I mean, or he has been told something is coming.
Or somebody's scared him.
Yeah. I got to get underground. This is just nuts. I can't stay here. Forget that. I'm going to go underground. But it'll be interesting to see after November what any of this stuff, if this even comes to fruition, if the Democrats actually grow a spine and go after him for the illegal stuff he's done. But that remains to be seen. Well, so the war is over. Well, kind of, maybe in Iran. We'll say over asterisk right next to it, and then at the bottom we'll see as we get to Man of War stings, and this one is I've told you Israel is not going to like this peace deal, and they surely don't. As Netanyahu refuses to leave Lebanon, Iran says continued Israeli occupation would violate peace deal. So this is part of it. So Trump is facing a choice: ending the war with Iran, which is tanking his popularity and the economy, or continuing his deference to Israel. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi made it clear on Tuesday that he cannot have both, following assertions from Israeli leaders that it would not end its occupation of Lebanon. Araghchi reiterated that the memorandum of understanding signed virtually by the U.S. and Iran, and will be literally signed on Friday, maybe, tentatively speaking, required in no uncertain terms that war will be ending everywhere on all fronts, including Lebanon. Due to the relations between war in Lebanon and the aggression of Israel on South Lebanon and the war on Iran, these two fronts, Iran and Lebanon, are quite connected to each other, he said. End of the war will be the end of the occupation, he continued. And without retreating and withdrawing from the Lebanese occupied territories, then there will not be an end to the war. So any military attack from the Zionist entity against Lebanon will never be accepted, he said. The continuation of the Israeli occupation of the Lebanese territories is a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding. That's plain and simple. It was a shot across the bow from Tehran following Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's assertion the day before that Israeli forces would remain in Lebanon for as long as necessary, regardless of any U.S.-Iran agreement. We established deep security zones around the state of Israel, he said, referring to the roughly 230 square mile occupation area where Israel has forcibly expelled more than 1 million Lebanese civilians and systematically demolished dozens of villages. I want to make it clear we will remain in these security zones to protect our country. The old self-defense they've been using forever. Other ministers were even blunter. Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said flatly that Trump's agreement does not bind us. Israel is not subordinate to the United States. We are an independent and sovereign country. the same really can't be said about the United States. Defense Minister Israel Katz said the occupation would go on, quote, without any time limit, while villages would continue to be cleared of local residents. He said there would be no withdrawal despite all the existing pressures from the U.S., adding that we are committed only to our citizens and the security of the state of Israel. Trump has regularly deferred to Israel's preferences and sided with Netanyahu as he's derailed previous ceasefire talks. But during a news conference at the Group of Seven summit in France on Tuesday, Trump took a noticeably different tone with his obstinate ally. The president said he didn't like the attack Netanyahu launched against the southern suburbs of Beirut on Sunday, on his birthday, where Israeli forces bombed a 5-story apartment building, killing 3 people. I saw that attack. I saw where that bomb went, he said, describing the attack as vicious and too much. You don't need to knock down an apartment every time you're looking for somebody, he said, making perhaps his most forceful criticism ever of Israel's rampant attacks on civilian infrastructure. Well, yeah, he probably could have said that when you were bombing Iran, too. Blowing up schools. He continued that if Israel can't do the job without killing everyone else, Syria should do the job of fighting Hezbollah. Ooh, now Syria's like, whoa, don't bring me into this bullshit. I don't want to know that. Without the United States, there would be no Israel, he went on. Without me, there would be no Israel because no other president was willing to do what I did. Says, cue the meme of the guy eating popcorn going, referring to Netanyahu, he said, I've had a great relationship with Bibi, but now Bibi has to be more responsible with respect to Lebanon, adding that the ongoing invasion throws a negative light on the big deal, and that's the deal with Iran. Commentators noted this is hardly the first time a U.S. president has vented their anger with Netanyahu. Reagan comes to mind, only for nothing to materially change. Noting Trump's previous description of Netanyahu as a very difficult guy after he attempted to blow up ceasefire talks on Sunday, Kenneth Roth, the former executive director of Human Rights Watch, said the question is, why does Trump facilitate this obstruction by continuing to provide Israel with arms and military aid and possibly combining the militaries, according to the NDAA that they're going to vote on? Zedio News editor Mehdi Hassan said such is the madly erratic nature of Trump that he can go from sounding like the most hawkish pro-Israel president one day to the most dovish anti-Israel president the next day, which is why listening to Trump is pointless. What matters is paying attention to what he does. Exactly. I'm not a really big fan of Mehdi Hassan, but he puts it right here. It's not what you say, it's what you do or what you don't do in that situation like that. So they are going to actually sign it in Switzerland on Friday. That's the tentative agreement, which could give Israel a lot of time between now and then to mess it up as they've done in the past. So my bet's on that. And if it doesn't happen, I'll be like, okay, they'll just mess it up somewhere down the line. Because this whole peace process thing is going in stages, right? They're supposed to be like at least 2 or 3 stages for this to happen. So plenty of screwing around can happen in that amount of time.
Indeed, but you know what? Donald Trump is responsible for Israel's existence.
He is.
We got him on record.
I went back in time to 1947 and I said, whoa, what's this place? Let's turn it into Israel, yo. You know, because I was wearing my big clock like Flavor Flav, and I had my hat backwards because that was the fashion at the time. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he said that he invented Israel. But, I mean, technically, he's kind of right. I mean, all they have to do is stop funding Israel, and they're not very powerful after that. So,
yeah.
You know, this news show is free. FREE, unless you know you're paying for the internet, obviously, or your cell phone. But you know, don't think about that. Let's get to the press pool and see. The Pew study examines why Americans hesitate to pay for news. Probably because a lot of times they don't want to pay for propaganda. I'll say that right off the bat. Research shows subscription fatigue, free alternatives, and skepticism shape Americans' willingness to pay. Depends on the outlet, too, obviously. The Pew Night Initiative has revealed more about readers' habits and the type of person most likely to buy a news subscription or make a donation. Pew Research Foundation surveyed more than 3,500 people and found that 8% of Americans say people have a responsibility to pay for news. The research found that 11% of Democrats or those who lean toward the Democrat Party say people have the responsibility to pay for some news, while 5% of Republicans do. College graduates and upper-income individuals are more likely to feel responsible for paying, with both cohorts at 14%. Only 4% of adults aged 29 or younger shared the belief. According to Pew researcher Kirsten Eddy, this was the first time Pew asked people about their feelings toward a responsibility to support news with their wallets. In general, what we find here in terms of belief about a responsibility to pay for news aligns with what we've seen in the past. When we've asked Americans who say they don't pay for news why they don't, the two most common responses are that there is plenty of other free news out there, or they're not interested enough to pay, Eddy said. Pew explored views about paying for news in focus groups. One woman in her 20s told researchers, "I don't think that information should be a privilege." A woman in her 50s said, "I don't pay to go to church," although you do tithe. So that's
well, I can talk about this all later, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't pay to go to church to get a spiritual message, and if you're true and your mission is to relay facts that are fundamentally important for people's well-being, do I need to pay you for that? Another study participant said he felt paying for news was a luxury and that he could get news from free sources or use search engines to find answers. Others noted subscription fatigue from being asked to pay for access to multiple news sources, including independent journalists on platforms such as Substack. Our Substack is free, by the way, just so you know. I can't do $5 for 20 people, one participant said. That's a lot. It adds up. On the other side of that coin, a man in his 60s said, "I think somebody must pay these journalists. Somebody has to. It's costly to travel around. It's mostly to report the news. And so I think it's good for our society that we have reliable, objective journalism." The research found that 16% said they have paid for news in the past year, whether through subscriptions, memberships, or donations. On the larger issue of general feelings towards the news, Pew's research found that people feel overwhelmed and skeptical, as well they should be. Well, the skeptical part anyway. The research found that 52% of people are worn out by the amount of news today. At the same time, most people believe they have a responsibility to be informed when they vote, and roughly half of those studies say they can stay informed with the news even if they don't actively follow it. People feel the onus is on news consumers to check whether the news they get is accurate. Pew's research stated Americans have far more confidence in their own ability to do this than in other people's ability. The study also noted that most adults say it's extremely or very important for people to avoid sharing inaccurate information, but fewer people say it's highly important to get news from multiple sources or from sources with a range of political views. And a lot of people confuse pundits for journalists, which is not good either, right? So back in the day, local television stations were required to have a certain amount of public service programming, right?
Yeah.
And one of those was news. News wasn't supposed to make money. It wasn't supposed to be a money-making thing, but it ended up, these stations found a way to profit off of those. Yes, you still had newspapers that you had to pay for and whatnot. But then again, back then, your sources of information were very limited, right? Now, you have just a world of options for your news. And what I always tell people, I say this on my shows too, be skeptical and follow the money. See, if you're thinking about paying money for a certain site, check out who's funding them. If anybody's funding them at all, right? There may be like some sort of mystery millionaire or billionaire behind the scenes, or they may be just totally crowd funded. And a lot of times you're going to get a lot more respectable news out of that.
Yeah, I think that I think this is very telling. Some of the things that were statements that were made here. That first of all, the reason why you would pay for news is so that people can pay the journalists. And that is kind of critical. And you had this one woman who said, "Well, if I go to church, I don't pay to go there. And if this is your mission, why should I have to pay for it?" Well, if you continue to think like that, that means the only people who are going to be journalists, only people who are going to be sharing the news are going to be people of extreme privilege that do not have to earn a living. So you might want to consider that, and you may want to consider also where their bias may be, because they're getting their money from somewhere, either a trust fund or a spouse or somebody who has a lot of money. You don't want that. So I think that that's absolutely critical to understand. And by the way, the churches that you go to, a lot of people paid a lot of money to get those church buildings going. The clergy are usually being paid, paying something, probably something rather significant in many cases. So the fact that you're not paying anything, or you're not tithing, or you're not putting in the offering plate, doesn't mean that a whole lot of other people aren't doing this. So I think it's absolutely critical that people understand that if you're not paying for the news, or that news should not be a privilege. Well, I agree with that. But when you're paying, when you're subscribing, when you support sponsors, you are making it so that people who can't pay are able to actually access the news and to get new news that way. The other thing that I think, as you point out, there's a lot more options these days, and many people just can no longer afford to be paying, $5 a month for 20 Substacks, as much as you'd like to, or whatever, super chats, or whatever you want to call it. People simply can't do that. I think it goes back to a combination of, there are some news sources that I think do very well with a subscription model, some that do well with donation models. And then, of course, it's going back to the old idea of sponsors. And in point of fact, news consumers tend to be the people who have the money. And there's some solid research on this. And advertisers have been hesitant to support the news, to sponsor the news, on the grounds that they're afraid of boycotts or people coming at them if there's something on the news that people don't like to hear. But the truth is that the people who have the money to buy goods and services are consuming the news, are news consumers. So it's disheartening to see these attitudes, particularly in young people, or people who just think that somehow or another journalists are supposed to work for free or at poverty wages, and are not thinking that there's a business aspect of this, whether you're doing not-for-profit or for-profit news. But I thought it was an interesting article that kind of explains the way people are thinking, particularly in an environment where getting the news and getting a variety of perspectives can cost a lot, particularly if you're feeling like there's a barrage coming at you.
I can't stress enough, punditry is not journalism. The opinions are not journalism. Journalism is journalism. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Those are the questions that need to be answered in journalism, and to get information out to people. And just like whenever you choose your news sources, when you're looking for news, not punditry, but actual news, just again, go to the about section of their website and look on there, see where they came from. Did they come out of nowhere? Did they have financial backing? Who financially backed them? That sort of thing. It doesn't hurt to do that. You couldn't do that in the past. I mean, I guess you could kind of look up things in the past, but you didn't really feel the need to. And now with like all these options, it would be kind of silly not to do that.
And a couple of things also to keep in mind. Your public library has magazines and newspapers, and that's free to do. And again, when you go into your public library and use their resources, the powers that be are going to be paying attention to how many people are using the library. By going in and using those free resources, you're supporting that library, because that's where the tax dollars and the donations are going to go. You still have over-the-air radio. We still have over-the-air television. Yes, you can get for $20 a digital antenna, plug it into your TV. There'll be a whole bunch of stations there, including stations with news. You're going to have to think critically. It may not necessarily be the perspective that you want, but it's going to be there for you. And then you can do your research on your own.
Exactly. I totally agree with that, especially with the critical thinking. There seems to be a massive shortage of that. And that's on the onus of the public.
Yeah,
you have to be skeptical. I always say skeptical doesn't mean paranoid.
No,
It's when you're looking for important information, you want to make sure it's coming from a credible source that exposes what they're about to the sunlight, so there's no question about their integrity or anything like that. So we were talking earlier about this stuff at the White House, the 250 celebration thingy. Are you in 250?
I'm so I'm so disgusted. I recently attended a wine tasting based on the Judgment of Paris, the wine tasting that took place 50 years ago in 1976, where California wines beat French wines, and that is as far as I'm going this year with any kind of celebration. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, I'll acknowledge there's a birthday, and then I don't really feel like celebrating, to be honest with you. But part of that celebration here, as we get to the clownfish school, they're supposed to paint the reflecting pool, and it didn't quite go to plan. So Trump administration blames Obama, of course, after blue reflecting pool turns green after $14 million refurbishment. This is from the Independent. Nope. The hell? Yes, close, please. We don't need a big ass thing. Trump administration has hid out at former President Obama after the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool water turned green, despite a much touted $14 million renovation. Maybe they just threw money into it, and that's why it turned green, because the money's green. Work on the pool was completed last week after Trump vowed to paint the space in an American flag blue. However, the familiar green algae often spotted in the pool returned just days later. In response, the spokesperson for the Department of the Interior took a swipe at the Obama administration in a statement obtained by the New York Post. Oh, yes, the New York Post. The nano bubbler technology has successfully destroyed the algae bloom that has plagued every pool reopening since 1922. Most infamously, the Obama pool reopening that resulted in massive algae clumps taking over the pool's surface. The spokesperson said, "Look at that. Jeez. That looks like lime jello, doesn't it? It just looks
like the Chicago River used to look."
I know. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you and yours. Tatar. This guy's good. It's green, right? He goes, "Yeah, what do you want?" Now, due to deploying the advanced nano bubbler technology, that sounds like some sort of like weed smoking device thing. The algae is dead and being vacuumed up as we speak. The spokesperson went on to claim the National Park Service was actually maintaining the pool versus previous administrations. According to online federal contracting records analyzed by the publication, the Trump administration spent $1.7 million on an upgraded ozone nano bubbler filtration system. I can't even speak it.
Can you bring that into a hotel room?
Yeah, I know, right? Let's will it get the smoke out? Yes, but it'll turn your hotel room green, aimed at dispersing oxygen bubbles to disrupt algae's food supply. Communications director Katie Martin told CNN that the algae had been sitting dormant for 8 weeks while construction had been taking place, adding that the return of the aquatic organisms was part of the normal startup process. "We are removing the algae, and the nano bubblers will maintain the pool and keep it algae free," she said. The Obama administration spent at least $34 million on a 2-year reconstruction project that ended in 2012, the AP reported, aimed at addressing issues such as stagnant water and the fact that the pool had begun to leak and sink into the land dredged from the Potomac River in order to build this. I mean, isn't there a lot of this on swampland anyway, too, that they built on, that they kind of refurbished? Pipes underneath the National Mall bring the pool's water to and from a nearby filtration plant, although they often leak. What crappy pipes in Washington? That sounds apropos. The Department of the Interior told the New York Times that it plans to repair those pipes in the fall. before the president's last renovations, the reflecting pool leaked around 16 million gallons of water every year, the Interior Department told the Post. Trump touted the revamped reflecting pool in a Truth Social post Monday as part of Tribute to America celebrations planned for July 4th. On July 4th, the Lincoln Memorial and Washington Monument in beautiful and safe Washington, D.C., even though he had like troops in Washington, D.C., National Guard. We're going to host the most spectacular Trump rally of them all, a tribute to America, the president wrote. Starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, this huge celebration will honor our country's people, spirits, strength, resolve, and triumphs. Now, I know he didn't write that. He probably added the capital letters at the beginning of the words. With the backdrop of the Lincoln Memorial surrounding the beautifully new reflecting pool, more than 300 members of our strong and talented military bands, orchestras, and ceremonial units, probably along with Kid Rock too, will perform patriotic melodies and American classics. In my playlist, we will have none of those people that put you to sleep and constantly complain as we celebrate our country and rally into the next 250 years. Yeah, so that pool always seems to have trouble anyway. Seems like a waste of money.
Well, I think Chuck was even mentioning this about using the wrong paint. I had read something, again, don't quote me on this, do your research, but that by painting it this American flag blue, which since blue is not the primary dominant color in the American flag, I find kind of strange, but that the dark blue attracted heat, held heat, and that contributed to the algae bloom.
They use Rust-Oleum or something. They probably should have get down there with little spray cans.
I don't know.
To try and fix that shit. Oh my goodness. 16 million gallons a year just to say, hey, it's a monument. Yeah. Again, priorities. That seems like the thing there. I'm pretty sure that's probably going to be one of those situations where it's like, ever since it was built, it'll never act right. It'll always break.
No, it's just one of those things that was maybe not a good idea.
Yeah, in theory, maybe, but then in practice, not so much.
Yeah.
Finally, today, speaking of practicing, people are the FIFA thing is going on here in the United States. They call it football, and we call it soccer. Sucker.
Potato, tomato.
Yeah, no, they don't use potatoes. They use balls when they play. See. And Massachusetts has the world's largest soccer ball on display. Hold on a second. There's a thing here. Let's see if I could do this, and then we could do this. Okay, so let's go back. So there it is right there. This is in Massachusetts. Look at those balls. Look how big that ball is. Holy shnikes. That's some big ass balls. Can I say balls enough? So this is going. I mean, look at that thing. They used all the politicians.
They had some foosball in there too. You were reporting on foosball, the biggest human foosball game.
Well, this is a world record. We always about telling people about these world records.
It's very important.
So the Massachusetts Port Authority officially broke a Guinness World Record by creating a soccer ball measuring 47.9 feet in diameter. The soccer ball installed in Pierce Part 2 Electric Boogaloo in East Boston was approved by Guinness World Records and officially took the title of the world's largest soccer ball from a 39.98 football created in Qatar in 2013. Oh, those people in Qatar are like, the ball created by Britain, Britten Incorporated, and Creative Inflatables in Ohio celebrates the FIFA World Cup games that will be played at Boston Stadium in Foxborough this month and next month. The massive soccer ball will be on display to the public until June 18th. Massport officials said the materials used to create the ball will be recycled. Well, that's good. So if you're in Massachusetts and you're a big mass hole, you better have big mass balls is what I'm saying.
Sounds like a club.
It's like a health problem. Well, you need to go see your
you
general
got the mumps?
practice. Yeah. Somebody's like, You better go see your general practitioner on that, sir. If your ball is that big, probably hard to get into the pants there.
So we got an interesting show coming up next week too. We have a guest, Kat Dietrich. She's a mother of 2 children with type 1 diabetes and has been navigating for a long time the school system and how children with disabilities and medical issues are treated and how their plans are managed and the state of school nurses at this time. So it's going to be a really interesting show on how our public schools serve children and their families when those children have medical issues.
That sounds good. That's going to be next week, same bat time, same bat channel, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Central here on YouTube and Rumble and Facebook, also on Substack too. And again, links to all these stories are in our Substack right now. The links are all down below. Also, we have links to our mutual aid folks that could use your help. If you can't donate, if you can share out the links, we appreciate that. I guess that's it for us today. I'll be back Friday morning with morning extra. Sorry, don't want to get sued. It's morning with the with the apostrophe up there because
no G's around here.
That's right. Daddy ain't got no lawyers. So I gotta do what I can. And so also a programming note for me, the secret show is kind of going to be alternating between Friday and Saturday nights. We had a show last Saturday night. It's really good.
It was great. It was fantastic.
And because I had a massive headache the day before, and I said, okay. But then I did a poll on the channel, and the majority of the people said they want to see it on Saturday nights. So we'll have it again this Saturday night, but there may be times in the future when something's going on Saturday night and they have to do it on Friday night. So just keep that in mind. So
just one thing, Uncle Warren does, I think, one of the best morning shows around. I mean, he just does morning extra. It's awesome. And the secret show is a lot of fun, and I think one of the reason Uncle Warren people wanted it for Saturday nights is that we're Gen Xers for the moment. Many of us are Gen Xers. We're tired on Fridays. Saturday night we've got a little bit more pep in our step and we can stay up a little later, but it's a tremendously fun time, fun stories. It's great to get together with our peeps and just laugh and have fun.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, some people have complained that it's not like talking about politics and world stuff, and it's like, well, we do other shows.
We do that, yeah, we do.
And sometimes you don't need to forget about the world permanently, but sometimes it's nice to take a little break from it. So, and have some fun. Yeah. It's good for the community. I appreciate that, and the peeps seem to appreciate it too. So we'll have that, of course, at some point. Maybe as a summer series, I have a channel called Mundus Ultra where we talk about different kinds of like paranormal stuff and stuff. So that's another aside from the real world stuff, or maybe it does include real world stuff if you believe in it too. So I'll make an announcement.
I'm all about that. I love that kind of stuff.
Those things are it's just fascinating.
It's fun.
You don't have to totally believe in that stuff, but you can totally enjoy the stories. Yeah, because you never know. I mean, we get lied to so much by the government and a lot of people in the media and stuff. So it's like sometimes you need alternatives to it. So other than that, I guess that's it. You got anything else before we get out of here?
No, but looking forward to your shows on Friday and Saturday, and looking forward to next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to next week too. And I love having guests on here too, as I know you do too. So it's great. It was great to have James on today. We hope to have him back, and some of our friends of the show that's been on before. Hopefully we'll get them back again too for other shows as well. So other than that, we're gonna get out of here. Let me turn this off.
We have 2 more subscriptions to get to 100.
Yeah, we're almost there. So yeah, if you could, if you're watching this in the future or watching this now and you're new, please like, share, and subscribe on our platforms. On YouTube, like Laney says, we're up to 98 subscribers. 2 more, and we get the free rotary saw. That's a prize. No, it's not. See, that's why you should be skeptical of media.
Very skeptical.
Because sometimes they lie. No rotary saw.
particularly for Uncle Warren.
Fake news. All right, guys, we shall see you next week. Peace out. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.